Hello, Leapers. This is Chris, and I am joined today with Matt, Albie, and Serenity to welcome to the podcast our very special guest, Mr. Brandon Routh. Brandon, welcome to the Quantum Leap podcast.
Hey, hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
This is just a terrific honor for us. I mean, we've spoken to most of the main cast and most of the guest cast, but I never thought that Quantum Leap would allow me to speak to Superman himself. So welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Super to have you.
Wait, was that a pun?
Yeah, we get a lot of those around here. So, well, yeah, I mean, you certainly need no introduction to most fans listening now with your turn as Superman and your involvement with the CW's Arrowverse as the Atom Ray Palmer. Can you tell us how you jumped franchises and came to Quantum Leap?
I think, it all started with Superman, really. Put me in the genre, for sure. And then I don't really think being part of Legends of Tomorrow necessarily helped as far as my qualifications in being part of a time-traveling show. But certainly bringing Ray Palmer to life was helpful in all of that. But I got a lovely had a lovely meeting with Dean Jugaris, co-showrunners. They presented the script to me, or the outline of the script, and told me about the significance of the role I'd be playing, which was exciting. And I was a big Quantum Leap fan from growing up, a child of the 80s and 90s, watching Quantum Leap. And I was very excited, had an amazing meeting with him. And also, the kicker was that the episode was going to be filmed on the USS Iowa, which is docked in Long Beach, California. And I'm from Iowa. And they had a dedication about 10 years ago for the USS Iowa when they were opening it as a museum there, but I wasn't able to attend. So it was very cool to be able to be there and be on it and film on it and participate. So it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you about sort of the filming location and the circumstances, because this episode of Quantum Leap is so much more action-oriented than we usually get on the show. And you had some really tight, intense scenes. And when you were filming, the location was the Iowa. Were those stage sets? Were you filming mainly on the boat, or was it just the exteriors? Like, tell us what the shooting was like, because it was so unique to Leap, you know?
The first 3 days were on the USS Iowa. We were inside the ship. We were on the exterior of the ship. We used as much of the ship as possible. All of the scenes involving the, what is it called? The threat display, the can't remember the technical name for the two places. One was the darker room, where we're looking over the screen and managing, what's happening. And then the exterior, we're seeing out onto the ship through the windows, the main command area, were both amazing sets that set deck and our team and carpenters and everybody made. It was just like the real thing.
Yeah, it seemed to me like it very claustrophobic, almost like you were on a submarine at times.
Yeah, I mean, I have not been on a submarine, and I think it's probably like even less room on a submarine, but certainly being 6'3", trying to traverse and run through the halls of the actual ship was challenging. I was a permanent stoop for 3 days to make sure that I didn't get a concussion. I didn't, so that's good.
Thank goodness, right? So you had mentioned that when reading the script, you had spoken to Dean about sort of the pivotal role of your character, not only in the episode, but in the larger Quantum Leap universe. They introduced us in this episode to Addisons' father. How did knowing this influence the way you approached the role? Did you feel more pressure because of it?
I mean, I felt a little pressure. I don't really feel, doesn't it feel like, I mean, everybody has their own definition, I guess, what pressure is, but didn't necessarily feel like pressure, but I felt honored by it. So for me, it's pressure, but it's, I take it on as like, okay, now I have to step up. So it is pressure, but I don't, in acting situations, I guess I don't fear it. I just go, okay, so now I just gotta bring it. And that, so it made it more appealing to be a bigger part, even though it was one episode. It was a bigger part of the lore and the history of the show, and so that's what made it exciting for me. It wasn't just a one-off, character.
As well as it being a pivotal role, it's also a very deep and emotional role. There's a lot of quite dark places you had to go to. Was that something that was clear when it was being pitched to you? And did that give you pause in terms of whether to accept the role and how you approached it, or did that just come out afterwards?
Yeah. Oh, good question. So I didn't actually. When they approached me, they didn't have a full script yet. They had a very detailed outline of like what most scenes and kind of like a little bit of a scripting of what might be said and of like the main point, the main thrust of a scene. And I think the two major scenes in my quarters were kind of laid out, and talked to Dean about that. And for me, I guess it might still surprise most people who've been watching me or don't know of my career much, but my first love is comedy. It's the genre, it's the style of acting that I have the most fun at on a day-to-day basis, and I'm most free when I'm able to be silly and irreverent. So this was the opposite of that. But I'm in a place in my career and in my life, I guess, where I'm working on emotional authenticity and really being able to speak truthfully in those heavy moments. So this was an opportunity to practice that in a very big, real way, because it wasn't, monsters attacking or aliens or, something sci-fi. Because that's normally where I play. This was real life, father-daughter and son-father dynamics playing. So I was a little bit hesitant, but also like, oh, this is an opportunity to learn. I'm gonna go through this door, and I'm gonna, put my best foot forward.
In this episode, it was very emotional, the scenes with you and Addison. Did you pull anything from your real life experiences to inform your character in this episode?
Oh, well, most definitely. Having now a 10-year-old son, had a wealth of experience with fatherhood and being a parent, and knowing how a parent's emotions and behaviors affect a child. So understanding Alexander's his relationship with his father, his birth father, and the trauma that was created through that experience, him wanting to move away from that and seek another more positive father figure in the captain of the ship, that was intriguing. And then just knowing also that, as a parent, you want the best for your child, and sometimes, and I can see how Alexander got to a place in his experience where he thought, I have to remove myself from her life to a degree so that my darkness, my trauma is not put on her. Now, there are other ways to handle this, as we know now in 2023. Therapy can help us, so we can engage, because the best option is not to abandon your child, because that creates its own trauma, even if it's a better trauma than than the other side. But anyway,
I have a question. Two questions, actually. Even though you didn't get to have any scenes per se with Caitlin, because you can't see or hear her technically, did you guys discuss the body language that you would have around each other, and how, even though you aren't communicating, was there any discussion about sort of the backstory that they had and the way that you played when you were in the same scene together?
Great question. No, we didn't. I'd watched 3 or 4 episodes of the show before I'd gone on the set, and I think I'd seen her stoicness, her matter of fact delivery, and the fact that she in real life, had extensive military service, and that I think that's also the backstory of her character. So that is kind of, I didn't really reflect that necessarily, but I saw that, and so I just, that was part of military. I mean, my observance of someone who served and who was a leader. So I adopted, I stepped into those shoes. But other than that, no, not really. I mean, we had many discussions about the last scene that we're in together, and that was more from a technical standpoint. I asked if she would like to film her side first or my side first. Sometimes, when you have an emotional scene, one person had, like in that scene, she has the emotion, she has the dialogue, she has all the emotion. It's her scene. I'm participating, but it's mostly her scene. And sometimes an actor wants to go first because they don't want to use all that energy, that emotional energy on while the camera's filming me. But if they're not ready, sometimes they want to go second and, rehearse more. So that was, we had discussions like that. More technical stuff because they don't have she was 3 or 4 when I, in 89. So there wasn't much interaction between us that would inform.
So I guess that leads to the second part of my question, because it's right there at the end of the episode. She gives that speech, and she mentions that you were the person who shaped her, that taught her everything that she knew, and that to me implied that her history with her father had been altered because of the events of the leap. Is that how you guys took it, or was there any discussion on that? Because it's only implied, or at least that's what I infer from the scene.
I believe the way that the timey-wiminess is that the events that happen in the episode have not reflected into her future until further at the next episode. The Legends of Tomorrow we always played with that. It's like, it takes some time for time to harden, to solidify. And then other episodes like, it's happening now. So, we played with that logic. But yeah, I think the effects of what she learned and how the relationship grows with her father in episode 13 will be seen, in further episodes, whatever that might be for her. And it's probably slight, adjustments. But
when you first talked to Dean and took this role, was there discussion of multiple appearances, multiple episodes? Do you know of any future episodes you might be in?
I have not been asked to return yet, but there have been what would I say? It'd be cool to have you back.
Mm-hmm.
Sentiments. It's a time travel show, so who's to say who couldn't come back? In what capacity, whether it's the 89 version of me or the 2023 version of my character, I don't know. But I would absolutely love to come back. It was a wonderful welcoming cast and crew. Everyone. It was just a joy to be there, to participate. It's not every job that happens. The best jobs in this business, even if the final outcome isn't what you intend for, the day-to-day is what it's about, and enjoying creating, whether it's just with your fellow actors or with the entire crew. You build a family and you build a team, and they accepted me as an adopted part of the family for 8 days, and it was great.
I guess the only challenge is if it's the 1979 version of your character that comes back.
Yeah.
Unless you fancy that particular challenge.
In real life.
I had a silly question. While you and Caitlin and Raymond were in the cabin set, your character's cabin, the pictures on the wall, were those pictures of Caitlin? Did you guys talk about that, or was that just some set deck that they took from something else?
I think they weren't Caitlin. I can't remember. I remember her having a reaction to seeing them. That it was either the pictures that they chose or that they weren't her. I can't remember. I know that the pictures of myself and my wife in there, we did those on the Universal back lot. And a lovely young actress came in and was my wife for a day. It's a tough. I've had to do that other times where somebody comes in just solely for photographs. But it's, everybody's important. That's the thing, You can come in, and I've done other photos like that where that person comes in and is kind of not alive in their face, and it makes the photo not look great. And it's a big part. Even though you don't say anything, you appear in the episode only in a small way. All that stuff is important, and she did a great job.
You had mentioned earlier that you were a fan of the original Quantum Leap. Do you have any specific memories of the show growing up, or what's your experience with the original?
I can't pull from any specific episodes. It's mostly about Dean and Scott's just connection and their friendship that sticks with me, and just the overall energy of the show, of that hope and not being too afraid of the unknown. That kind of, for me, I guess, persisted in viewing it. It was, in that time, there was not a lot of, you had your 4 channels at that time.
Yeah.
3 channels, 3, and PBS. So, and we didn't have cable for a long time. So, TV was a big deal for me.
I think Rennie had a question.
Yes. How is it being Superman?
It's amazing. It's one of those opportunities that still is somewhat elusive at times to kind of just be able to hold. Because here in my house, I'm just dad. And sometimes I'm the dad that somebody's not happy with because I lay down the law and have to set boundaries. And other times I can be fun dad, but then we go outside and somebody's like, "Hey, it's Superman," and it's a whole different. Then I shift into a different part of myself, I guess, to help represent the energy and spirit of Superman, which lives inside me, which lives inside everybody. I just think because of my work as the character, I've attuned to him more, but not fully. Walk around imagining I'm Superman. But it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to know that the most important and the coolest part of it is knowing that the art that I helped create, along with all of the other amazing artists who worked on Superman Returns and who worked on Crisis on Infinite Earths, is that this can really help lift people out of darkness, even if it's for a few hours, and to point toward better possibilities that do exist. That even though we can be sad at times, that everything shifts and changes, and Superman is a beacon of light, and I'm very proud and grateful that I get to help represent that and carry that torch in a little way.
Now, give us the scoop. I know that James Gunn is overseeing the rebranding of the DCEU, and we have some multiple timelines in the new Flash movie. Are you going to be brandishing the big red S in Ezra Miller's Flash movie coming up?
Oh,
come on, you can tell us.
Certainly not. Certainly not in the new Flash movie. The trailer looks amazing. I'm very excited to see that. And as beyond that project, I have no idea. I would absolutely love to. I would jump at the chance to participate again, whether it be as Superman or as Ray Palmer. I think I like to think that Ray can be used in any of those worlds and matches well in that world as well. So I don't know. I can tell you that I'm very excited, and I'm excited to see what what James and Peter bring forth. Because if there's one thing I know, it's that James loves comic books and appreciates them and values them and values the relationships that are created. The most important thing that happens in his films, in his superhero films, especially in Guardians of the Galaxy, which are excellent, I think my favorites actually of the Marvel universe, is the relationships between these disparate characters. But he creates family, found family, and that's so important. It's such an important message. So I'm excited for what comes next.
It's funny when you say found family, I can only think of Legends. And when I heard that you were going to be on this episode, I was excited because I was a fan of Legends. But then when Addison described you as cold and distant and kind of a hard ass, all I could think of you is, as Ray with that big goofy grin, always geeking out. And it was a little bit for me to say, okay, let me see how Brandon does it. I think you did great, but I think that the ensemble nature of Legends was terrific. And also the fact that you guys were so irreverent and self-referential. Can you tell us a bit about what it was like to work on that show for so long? Because it evolved so much over the course of the seasons that it was on. To the point where you made yourselves the butt of jokes sometimes in the overall universe of, I guess, The Flash and Arrow. So, especially Arrow. Arrow was so dark. You went from the darkest show on the CW to the funniest show on the CW. So,
yeah. Well, I was the funny in Arrow, season 3 anyway, and so then they took me and transplanted me over into Legends of Tomorrow, which just then grew. And I think that's because when Legends started out, they had an idea. Where they wanted to use all these talented actors and cool characters, put them on a show, and had an idea for the first season. And then we kind of were open to what was going to happen next. And I think that was one of the cool parts of the show, was that structurally they didn't stick to, it has to be this way, which was a little bit frustrating for actors, because then I was like, wait, but this rule we set up, and then right here now we're like, where's the floor, right? This time, can we change time? Can we not? So that was frustrating from like an actor standpoint, but it really allowed freedom for the show to grow and change, and I think it really became the best version of itself in season 3, through the evolution of season 3, and then season 4 I think was the best episode of the show. Best season of the show. And Ray was the comedy. Everybody was doing comedy in the first season, but Ray was more broad. And then as the actors and characters grew, it became a little bit more broad. And I just kept taking that. I would just take an inch or give an inch and I would take a mile and see how far I could push it, because that's the fun, that's the joy. And the writers responded, and everyone else, did as well. And, the writers then put us in, crazy, outlandish, ridiculous positions. And you either had to believe it and go with it, and swim or sink. And thankfully we swam. We swam.
When they were doing the Crisis crossover, that was the huge event for the entire CW. And was it a given, like from the get-go, that you were going to reprise your role as Superman?
No, not at all. That was a really, really challenging time, the beginning of that, the inception of that, because I had just found out that I would not be returning for all of season 5, that they decided that my wife and I, and Nora Dark, who played Nora Dark, Courtney Ford, who played Nora Dark, were going to be leaving the show halfway through season 5, which was a huge disappointment is such a small word. It was quite crushing for us, because we loved those characters and we loved that show, that world. And then a few weeks later, I got a call from Mark Guggenheim, who had stepped back as a couple seasons ago from Legends, and and was overseeing a bunch of, everything in the, CW verse pretty much, and all the crossovers. And he said, hey, would you be interested in, playing Ray in the crossover, but also like playing a character with a different colored suit? And I said, wait, are you talking about Superman? He said, yeah. So I said, wow, I was very shocked. I always held open the possibility, but thought it was incredibly low that CW, Warner Brothers, and DC would all sign off on me returning. But it was true. And that helped kind of turn a little bit of that terribleness into a little bit not so terrible for me. And really helped me gain closure on Superman. It was very affirming for me to just to be asked, and then the response from the fans. Very grateful for that opportunity.
This is going to be such a geek question, but which did you enjoy playing more, Kal-El or Clark?
Is that a cat? I see a cat. Something's attacking you, Matt.
Yes, my cat likes to join in. She's obviously enjoying the interview, so.
Tentacle. Hi, what's the cat's name?
Scully.
Hi, Scully.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. Is there Mulder somewhere?
There is no Mulder.
Oh.
One of these days.
That's a mystery. Well,
12 years, Scully's been searching around for Mulder.
Oh. The aliens. It's probably aliens. The question was,
do you like being Soups or Clark better?
Oh, Soups or Clark?
Yeah. Which was funner to play?
Well, Clark is slightly more fun to play. Clark's less pressure, for sure. I don't have to work out as much. I have to worry about my posture. And I get to be funny and goofy and silly. And be, a different side of Kal-El. But Superman has grown on me as I've gotten older. When I got to play him in Crisis, I felt more like I could actually be Superman. Going from being 24, 25 the first time to 40, that 15 years informed me in many ways, and I felt a little bit more wisdom and worldly experience, and having been also a father at that time, more grounded in my humanity, and like I could actually bring a little bit of groundedness to Superman. So it got the gap got a little bit closer. It's amazing to be Superman, but that's more pressure and more challenging.
Could you share with us maybe a story or the feeling you got being on set that we might not see in the episode, but you remember from the 8 days filming Quantum Leap?
I mean, you should just know that Ray and Caitlin are amazing. They are incredibly welcoming and genuine, wonderful human beings. Which is awesome from the 2 stars of the show to have that, because sometimes you can, actors, they can have an ego, right? But they have a healthy amount, both great leaders of the set, welcoming and thankful for their crew, knowing that they're part of a team. I think that's such a huge thing that I appreciate. And then we had a lot of fun. I mean, Ray's a very funny guy. So, cracking jokes with him and silly puns and stuff that I like to do on set. The most funny, not the most funny, but the thing that comes to me is, when Caitlin's in a scene, when she has dialogue, but the camera's looking at me or one of the other characters, especially all the other guest stars, it's very hard not to look at her. She's talking, but we don't see her. So they got me once with that. And a couple other people were like, nope, don't look at Caitlin. Okay, she's not there.
It must be difficult not to look at her.
Yeah.
A little bit, but I've trained myself pretty well.
There you go.
I just want to pick up quickly, if I can, on you mentioned about Ray and Caitlin's leadership. Just in terms of your character, obviously with the CO being pretty much off his rocker, you were the one displaying the most leadership as a character.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like walking onto a set as a one-off guest character in an ongoing series and being the one that everyone is turning to as a leader? How do you fake that?
I'm thinking back to what were the first scenes that I filmed, and the first scenes that I filmed, I think, were running, and going down the stairs, and bursting out of my quarters and taking out the man-at-arms. It wasn't a challenge on this show. I think because I was the XO, and they'd written him so full that there was enough like understanding of his backstory to know like I could just integrate that information, and also, you know, I guess to Ray's credit, that when I came on set, he wasn't like, "Hey man, what's up? Yep, yeah. So this is my set, and don't mess it up." There was none of that attitude. It was just open and friendly, and hey, come play with us. So he, you know, then his character, and you know, he lowered his energy to be that of below the XO. So it wasn't a challenge, I guess. And because I played characters akin to Alexander, Superman is incredibly stoic. I hadn't made the connection until I did another interview a couple days ago, and I realized that actually I was subconsciously pulling from Superman's stoicism in many ways, his quiet, his calm, and that was used in Augustine. So I practiced at it.
So, I mean, now that this episode of Quantum Leap is in the can, with maybe more episodes to come, maybe, we hope you'll reprise your role or be able to reprise your role. What else is coming up? What else can our fans expect to see you in?
I did a romantic comedy last year called Out of Order, which I think hopefully will be coming out sometime this year, probably on VOD or some streaming service if they're able to sell it. It's independent, but it's a very funny. Well, hopefully it's funny. It was fun to shoot, and I played two characters in that actually. And it's with Sam Huntington, who played Jimmy Olsen in Superman Returns, and he was also Marcus and Dylan Dog. So this is our third film together, and we're just being kind of silly. It's like Mrs. Doubtfire. If Mrs. Doubtfire was, well, I don't turn into a woman, but another version of myself, where I put on a costume and there's lawyering involved. I play both sides of the case, becoming both attorneys, prosecuting and the defending attorney.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think Albie's antennas just went up because he's our resident rom-com nerd. He loves every rom-com.
So I'll be checking that out, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging me on, as you can tell, I'm a little bit of a Superman fan. So it's, you know, it's nice to be able to speak to someone who, you know, came back and sort of embodied the legacy that Christopher Reeve gave us when building the character. Yeah. And I know that was a very conscious decision on the part of Bryan Singer when you guys were making that film. So, I mean, were there any anecdotes from that set that you can recall? I know it was so many years ago, and this is just me indulging myself. Thanks guys. Thanks Quantum Leap fans for putting up with me, but I have you here now. I gotta be a little bit more of a Superman geek. I'm sorry.
I think we have a Venn diagram in our fandom, don't worry.
Yes, very much. I mean, the cross sections everywhere. I can just be a fan of one of these genre things.
So with that legacy in mind, how did that affect how you approached your version of Superman? Were you beholden to what you saw Chris do when he created the character? Mm-hmm. Was that a discussion that you guys had on set about capturing or trying to recapture the feel of the Donner films? How did that manifest itself when you guys were making Returns?
It was made clear to me very early on from Brian that we were doing basically a loose sequel to Superman, Superman the movie, and because of that, bringing in the energy, Chris's energy, was part of the job. I was never asked to watch Chris to replicate his movements, to be a carbon copy of him. I was never asked to do that, and I didn't watch the movie after the casting process because I knew it so well. When I read for Brian and Roger Resendin, the casting director, they had there was scenes from Superman the movie. I think it was just one scene. I think it's the pit, the first time Clark and Lois meet in the bullpen, what it's called, glass doors closing off this thing, and it was the Clark scene that Brian reflected back to me was why I was meeting with him. That's what grabbed his attention, and thought maybe I could do this job because my Superman needed to work. I was always more in tune with Clark. Clark lives with it. Parts of Clark live inside me, so that was easy for me to bring out and to embody. And that is also, here we go, connecting the dots. And that is also because Chris is my Superman. The energy of his Clark matches my energy as a person to a large degree. So had I been asked to play a different version of Superman, I think there was always going to be that element of Chris's Superman, because that Superman, that core, that hope. He always had that charm and hope, and that's the key into Superman is hope, is the unwavering hope. I mean, maybe you waver a little bit because that's interesting, but obviously he did in moments throughout his film series, but he always comes back to hope, and so that's what I carried through in my performance. And of course I did the glasses and a little bit of those things, funny moments and Easter eggs, iconic moments. But I really worked to make Clark not fumbling. He was just excited about interacting with people, because he didn't get an opportunity to do that, really. Superman, you don't. And so Clark was like, hey, people, hey, oh, this is cool. And then, so he wasn't like always putting on being clumsy. It just came out of him playing the role of Clark Kent, a version of himself. That makes sense.
No, it does. And that's one of my favorite aspects of the character, is that dichotomy between Superman and Clark. And I always find myself more interested in Clark, to be honest with you, because is it just Cal putting on an act? Is it commentary on humanity? Or is he just so aw shucks Kansas farm boy at heart that's the real him? So yeah, I have a whole headcanon with Superman.
they're all him. They are all parts of him. Maybe he's amping up one part and dampening another, but they're all aspects of him. We all have many aspects of ourselves. Like I said, when I'm out in public, I can step into more of a Superman tone and everything, and my whole presence can shift. But I'm not always Superman, and being always Superman-like energy is like, it's not as fun as being Clark energy sometimes, So I don't think we are all any one thing at any one time, even Superman or Kal-El.
Well, again, thank you to my co-hosts and to our listeners for indulging me in my Superman fanboyisms. I guess we can just maybe bring it back to Quantum Leap before we let you go, or any
Good
messages
idea.
out there. Any messages out there for the Leapers? Anything that you want to say to our listeners, to the fans of Quantum Leap?
Thanks for watching the show and being a fan, spreading the words, watching cool genre that's like positive and helping the world. I hope you enjoy the episode. And I guess I'd just say one other thing for everyone listening, because it's coming to me that I've been to a lot of conventions, comic book conventions, and meet a lot of people, and now as I put another genre role in my resume, it attracts even more, a broader fan base. A common theme, I think, for people who enjoy these shows is that we feel we kind of marginalize ourselves and feel like nerds or geeks. And I think that's a disservice. This is a PSA, I guess I'm doing a PSA. It's a disservice to the person and also to the creative work, because what sci-fi and fantasy does, what these genre projects can do, is shape the future. We have to imagine the future before we can create it. So all these outlandish big ideas are really informing where we're going, can inform where we're going as humans and on Earth. And I think that's really cool. And also, like, everybody is a nerd and a geek about something. Some people are geeks and nerds about fantasy football, and shoes and hair and makeup. So everybody has their geekdom. And most of them also watch these shows. They just are too afraid to reach out and find community. And I think one of the amazing things that these genre shows do is create community. And I think that's just so exciting and so awesome. And you guys are helping, help create community and connect us all and show us that we're all, we all really want the same thing, which is joy, love, and acceptance, and health. And that we can all get along. I didn't wrap that up as well as I wanted to, but anyway, don't devalue yourselves for liking. If you are, just love the things you love freely.
Well, I think that's a wonderful note for us to end on. So, Brandon, Thank you very much for joining us on the Quantum Leap podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.